What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, a.k.a. ToeTagginTambo. Back for another edition. We're back on our station for this one. Back for the Friday Night Football is what we're coining it. The International Series game in Brazil, Green Bay, Philadelphia Eagles. Going to break it all down for you guys and more. We'll pull up SHIPIT, the Stone. We'll have everything up so you can sort of see the options. We're going to go through captains, roster construction, ownership, how you can build the lineups differently. A ton of options on this slate. Got the resident Green Bay Packers fan in the house with our guy Title. Got Hoopster back here with us, but you probably saw the video on the way in. I could just run that video back one more again. Like, that little beat gets me hyped up. So excited to be back talking some Showdown. You guys probably saw a huge night one of success for SHIPIT Nation, but Hoopster, going to bring you in first, man. It was a huge night for the nation, and I think there was some confusion. We loved Likely, but we didn't really get to him. A lot of us got caught. Like, it was Worthy lineups. We liked Worthy in the captain, and we loved Likely. You mentioned him a bunch of times stuff too, but actually that's why we didn't really get all the way home. My lineup, even the main, was a flip off the two of them, but really good night overall, man. How you doing today?
Yeah, it was a good night, good game. I mean, fun to watch from an entertainment standpoint, even if you're not somebody that's on the gambling. Well, yeah, I mean, not for you, but for everyone else. I mean, all the normal people that don't root for the Ravens. It was a good night, but that's what you want. A game that goes down to the end, last play, and unfortunately for the Ravens people, he had his toe on the line. But Mahomes' comment was great. He said, what did he say? Something like don't wear white shoes or something like that. It was great. Yeah, I mean, we were on the Likely stuff. I didn't play him in captain. That's what ended up costing me. I mean, I had way over the field in flex, didn't play him in captain, so didn't get the full shipment. I was right there. It was I know this is like a thing that people always say when they lose. I broke even, but I was right around break even, and I'll take that for night one of NFL. I had some really good teams, but again, no Likely in captain. Not likely to win when you didn't have that last night. The show went great yesterday in terms of the calls. The content was spot on, and a lot of big wins in the community and on our content team. Nade's got the job done. You did. Scarface got the job done. Scarface, continues, man. It's relentless pressure from him at the top of these leaderboards, just always right there in the big boy contest, and very thankful to have him being a part of our team this NFL season. Going to be a great asset to the SHIPIT Nation community. But in terms of today, we get a bonus Friday night Showdown game, and when we're going through the schedule, we're like, oh, we're going to do a show for that, and all three of us are like, absolutely. I mean, these are our favorite shows. I love doing these shows, these Showdown shows. So much fun doing them with you guys. So we're going to break it down. Eagles, Packers, and we got a Packers fan on here too, so make it a little more enjoyable.
We'll get right to that Packers fan in a second, but I like how you called it a full shipment. I didn't quite get the full shipment last night. It didn't come through, but a lot of nights it is coming through. You got MMA.
Had a few things on back order. The full shipment didn't come through.
They can't get through the MMA packages that got shipped to you over the last three slates, and it's coming back tomorrow, so you're going to have to make room. But guy that's a big part of that as well. Title, we got some stuff going on this weekend with MMA, with the 64-man showdown and whatnot, but we're here to talk Packers Eagles. My friend, how was your first night? What's your thoughts? That game, I know it's from a Ravens fan, not the greatest, but man, a little bit too many flags. Not against the Ravens. I called the biggest flag of the game that should have been called was Mahomes was 5 feet out of bounds and they smashed him, and they didn't throw the flag for that. But I just thought the never-ending flag league, the NFL, to start the season, game one, the game already started 20 minutes late. Let us watch the game. It was tough watch for me. The ending turned out to be great. The DFS side, wonderful. How you doing, Title? What's going on, man?
Yeah, man, the NFL must have really told those refs, make sure every single lineman has their head with the tack or the guard or whatever.
That shit is so stupid, man. Those calls are just so dumb. Just like nobody at home wants to see that shit. Like the players don't want to see it. Let's just play some fucking football. And get rid of all that crap. It's so stupid.
It hurt him a lot. Yeah, Zay Flowers' pass interference was like 50 yards downfield. It was negated because of that.
What I will say, holding call too on the Lamar Jackson run. What was it, a 30-yard run, and he barely touches the guy, and they're calling holding. And the only reason they threw the flag is because the guy threw his hands up in the air. So they're like, oh, he must have been held. We'll throw the flag. I mean, it's just dumb stuff like that. Let's just play football.
What I will say is I'm definitely going to be playing some Lamar and Zay Flowers together, and you can throw Likely in there in the classic slate. Skinny Lamar, that man is on a mission for sure. He was good. But, yeah, I mean.
I forgot. Go ahead.
I mean, you call me a Packer fan. I definitely am, but nothing like I used to be. I mean, I'm cheering for my money. I'll cheer for the Eagles any day today if that makes me making money. It's an interesting slate, though. Anytime the Packers will be on Showdown, they got a billion guys. The receiving core, they're very young. It's a similar situation to yesterday as far as Pacheco, the backup running backs for the Chiefs. The Packers, Marshawn Lloyd and Tucker Kraft questionable. I think Kraft plays, Lloyd misses. So another Jacobs will get a lot of work. And then the preseason guy is Art running back too. Hurts, your favorite tush push. Big thing, Kellen Moore, Cowboys OC, now the Eagles OC. And I mentioned that because Kellen Moore is one of the nut DFS and just fun coaches. They'll run a lot of plays. They'll throw the ball lots, more concentrated Eagles side, more open on the Packers side. But yeah, excited to talk some football. $1 million to first.
The answer to this is they lose. Whether it was Zay that caught it or Likely, they were definitely going for 2, which I love that call. You're in Arrowhead. It's the first game of the season. Just you're already right there. Get the job done. You win or lose. I love that call. Unfortunately, he missed Zay. And then obviously Likely was out of bounds. But yeah, they lose probably. That's what ends up happening in those situations. I've watched a lot of them in the past, but we'll get right to it. Let's hop in. Yeah, we got a big game here to talk about. I'm going to bring over the site just so we can pull it up with Shiptimizer. One of the things that came up with people asking about it as I go through here and stumble through it was people talking about when you go to Shiptimizer, so you just go to the site, you go here, NFL, they wanted to learn about how we sort of do the dry run, if you will. Hoop always talks about this, so I thought I would pull it up just quickly for you guys. But when it first sets up and everything is reset to the beginning here, all you have to do, this is what I do, and this is to get more optimal too. I'm skipping a step, but I just want to show you guys. You do want to turn these because usually they're on medium because we want some sort of randomness. You set those down to none so we can get right after our whole optimal there. And then all I do is I go by projected value and to 2 people. And I just, instead of changing projections at all, I just change it to like 99 max exposure and then run it out with 150 lineups just to see. And I might have messed it up off the top. So let me see here before I mess this up further. What did I not change, Hoop? Remind me.
I don't know. Yeah, let me. It's weird that it's doing that. And just run it, see if it'll run like that.
No, because that was the first part I was telling you about. So let me just see here for a second. I just changed it to that.
There we go.
No, it's not doing it. So
all right. Well,
maybe try on your side just to see what it does so we can have it up. But I know we were just updating it. You can see the update there is 3:09. It's 3:13 my time. So I know they just updated something. But while I'm doing that, maybe you run it on your side. But we'll bring up the stone. We'll go through it. But just so you guys know, that is how you do it. It's just obviously something right now. But the main thing is we'll bring up the stone so we can look at the teams that are playing. But when you do run it, you'll see just what the exposures give you. And it might be they're updating the projections as we speak. That's what somebody just said. So all projections aren't in. So I apologize for that. But like I said, either way, you change the randomness to 0 so that you're getting your actual optimals. You change 2 settings. Like Hoop said, you can change 2 players by 0.01. You can change the exposure to 99 max on a couple guys because you're probably not going to give that anyway. The dry run just means he's seeing what does the optimizer do for somebody who just wants to press the button and run it. And that's what it is. And our girl Kim, shout out to Kim, always in here helping us out, said that there's people missing because the editor's working on it. So that's why. But once you make the change, it will work. So all we're seeing, what is the field doing? And then is there something we can find within that we can adapt to? Today, I know when I ran it before the show, I did have it up there already. It was giving me like 56% of Hertz in the captain slot, right? So.
Yeah, when I ran it earlier, it was a lot of Hurts, it was a lot of Jordan Love captain, and then it got sprinkles of a bunch of different guys. Some of those Packers wide receivers, Josh Jacobs obviously was up there. He ranks as one of the better values on the slate. So that's kind of where you're not getting much AJ Brown if you don't change stuff, not getting much Devonta Smith, not getting much Saquon Barkley is what I noticed in the captain. When I ran it at first, it was heavy Hurts, heavy Love, heavy Jacobs, and then sprinkles of those Packers wide receivers and tight ends. And Goddard got a little bit too.
Yeah, and we'll cover it here too. Like I said, I brought it up on the stone so you can see on the site. We've got that. Just go NFL, the stone under Showdown, the stone. It's there. It's got the positions, the players, the prices, DK and FanDuel separated. We'll get to the FanDuel segment at the end for you guys. But Title, I'm going to give it to you here first on just talking about the game. We didn't do this yesterday, but just the game as a whole, what you're seeing. I mean, for the spot and everything, Philly's only favored by 2 last I checked, 49.5 point total. By the way, YouTube chat we're 0 for 1 to start the season again. They had Ravens and under, and it was Chiefs and over. So we'll get that later on. That's always a fun segment. But real quick, Title, just your thoughts on how you see the game tonight, some of the stuff that stands out to you, your overview, if you will.
Man, I'm excited. Two of the better teams in the NFC. Packers are really young. They have a lot of ways to beat you. The Eagles, again, I'm excited for fantasy purposes because Kellen Moore's in town. The game opened, or the total opened 48.5, now 49.5. I do lean the over if I had to pick. -1.5. Philly opened, now sitting around -2. I think it's going to be up and down. I think it's going to be fun football. Packers have a good defense, but again, I think the Eagles will find a way to move the ball, and I think the Packers have so many weapons. It's just who's going to be the guy for the Packers is going to be the tough thing to figure out in Showdown, but it'll lead to, I guess, like there's going to be concentrated ownership like Hurts. He's too cheap. Why is A.J. Brown 400 more than Hurts? But there's clear spots, as the Stone always does show, where you can find leverage spots. It's clear as day who those are going to be. And we'll talk about when we get there. People are going to mix in Packers receiver, going to mix in Jordan Love way too cheap. And one thing that I noticed, Packer builds are more heavy than Eagle builds today, even as 2-point dogs, which is interesting, but it does make sense because they have more options. It's so concentrated on the Philly side. And of the options, they're in the mid 5Ks, the low 6Ks, it's easy to mix them in. And Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts, way too cheap by far. Both quarterbacks are, just like yesterday.
Yes, and that's actually a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because it doesn't get talked about enough in Showdown, where it doesn't sometimes matter. Like some people just assume that because a team's favorited, that's going to be what the 4-2 builds look more like, or people lean that way. But it's oftentimes more in correlation with what options do we have and feel comfortable with on either side. In this case, obviously Green Bay, like you mentioned, there's just a litany of options that you can go through there, some injury stuff that may lead to even more. So it just makes more sense to fit that. And it's also because the most expensive players are on the Eagles. So in order to get to those, you sort of need those fill-ins that project the best and go there. So again, just another thing you'll find out when you do sort of the dry run that we talked about. Hopefully we can get it up before it does. Jacob asked a quick question. When you change the max exposure to 99, it's just saying the most you could get of anybody was 99% of your lineups. When it's set up as the default to 100, it's saying if it did decide that there was just an extreme value on this slate that it would lock them in, you would be allowing it to lock in if you were saying it could get up to 100%. I just want to make sure you know how that works. Hoop, did you have a grand scheme overview?
I think you're good to go. If you want to try to run that while I'm kind of talking about the overview, I just ran it and was able to do so. We were making some changes.
Yeah, they were missing players. I went back and looked just so everyone knows there was only 10 guys in there. Yeah. And okay, it looks like they're populated now. I'll mess with it while you talk. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I agree with the point that you guys just talked about. It's very clear why the Eagles guys are getting squeezed a little bit compared to the Packers guys. It's a price tag. If you look at the slate and say who are guys that are maybe appropriately priced or overpriced, it's all Eagles guys. A.J. Brown, 11,000. That's a big boy price tag. Saquon Barkley in the mid-9s, and then Devonta Smith, he is 99K flat. So like those are the only three guys that you look at here and say, that's kind of a big boy price tag. Everyone else on the slate is like underpriced. The quarterbacks are too cheap. All the Packers wide receivers are too cheap. The tight ends are too cheap. The kickers are always too cheap. So it's going to be heavy Green Bay builds tonight. In terms of the game, man, it pains me as a Lions fan because this team, I think, could be scary this year. But I think the Packers get the job done tonight. I like the Packers to just win this game straight up. So I think they make some big strides this year. I think they're going to be a very tough team. I like the Packers side to win the game.
Yeah, interesting spread. I was very surprised that it was 2. Obviously, I'm with you. We talked about it plenty on the shows last season about Jordan Love and sort of the guys that he had around him, keeping them healthy, just mini, setup there that with all these options to go to. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. 2 did surprise me, though. So here it is, just so people see. I just put 2 of the guys to 99. I changed the build settings, and then I ran it. Anybody who was watching saw it on the screen. I ran the 150. They came up very quick. 150 lineups in the current build. You go to exposures, captain. I'm going to try a secondary step here, but we'll start here just because this is the other thing. I don't know if you do this when you do your dry runs. Like this tells us, obviously, the quarterback heavy in the captain slot. It's wanting to give us a bunch of Jalen Hurts because we didn't cap it or anything. And in the flex, tons of the quarterbacks. Obviously, Jalen Hurts a little less because we're so heavy on him. He is showing up right now in 99% of the lineups, right? We've got him in right across the board, maybe even 100, because I might not have put him to 99. But do you ever adjust it further once you see this, just to be like, not many people are going to run 54% Jalen Hurts, and I can show that too?
So the next step that I kind of follow when looking at this stuff is I look at the captains and see, okay, who's populating the most at the captain position, and we see it here. It's Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love. I mean, they just messed up the prices on the quarterbacks. I have no idea why they're so cheap. This is clearly going to be the case. They're clearly probably going to be the highest owned. And then you get, 4 more guys here. So Dallas Goedert's he's less than 1%. So you're getting Watson, who shows up as a good value. Jaden Reed shows up as good value. And then Jacobs also shows up as good value. The next thing I do is I go to Flex and see, is there any just random guy that I'm getting a ton of? Like, is there a random 200 guy that's projected for one that's showing up in 50% of lineups? Because that would skew things a little bit. Scroll down a little bit more.
It's Wilson that shows up.
Yeah, so the first guy, but that's not anything all that crazy. So no, I mean, this is pretty legitimate. There's not like a guy projected for 1 fantasy point that's shown up in 50% of lineups. So you can get a gauge of what the field's going to do, and it's going to be heavy Hurts in the captain. Like, you're going to be able to do it with ease. This shows us that we can play Jalen Hurts, or the field can play Jalen Hurts in the captain at a very high rate without a bunch of donkey plays in the flex. So Hurts is going to be very popular. It's easy to get there. What this also tells me is playing some of these Packers wide receivers, who I do think have big upside in this spot, probably is going to be a little overlooked and not low owned. I mean, they're all going to get a little bit, but it's a leverage opportunity, I think, to play anyone outside of the quarterbacks and Jacobs. I do think Jacobs will get up there in ownership. People are going to like his price tag, like his workload, and rightfully so. I think it's probably, more like 15% or something for a guy like Jacobs, but this is a legitimate run here. And like, it's easy to play Hurts in the captain and not have to like play, super cheap, punt plays on the slate.
I love this question. I could answer, but I want you to, because you just talked about it. But I think this is why you're looking for this, like what's causing it. So speak on this a little bit. Maybe that'll help.
So what I would do then, if we went to Flex and there was a random guy in there, a random $200 guy, what I would do is I would cap it and see what happens. So I would just say, all right, it's not realistic. I'm not playing a $200 guy at 50%. I'm going to put max exposure 5 in there and then rerun it and see what happens. You can do it with it's not going to be much here if we did that on Emmanuel Wilson, just because it's only 13%. If we capped it at 5, it's not going to change this.
No, I just want to show that example though. If he was the guy that was up here getting 46, you would just go in here to Wilson and go, okay, he's going to be about 12. That may go, again, these are our initial ownership projections, but even if that's at like 15% ownership and you're getting 46 and you're like, that's just ludicrous, I don't need that. You would just pop this down and say 24, whatever number you want there as your max exposure, and then see if it starts to force in some AJ Brown or some Devontae Smith or other guys that should take away from some Hurts, most likely in that case.
And honestly, like, I think this is it's the first thing I do. And I think it's a very important thing to do for sure, because you get a real feel for what sort of builds are viable and what the field is going to do. Again, and I do this in most sports too. I just run it to see what happens, make the little change, whatever, cap it at 99 so the teams will run. You can get a really good feel for what's going on. I do it in baseball. I do it in MMA. I do it in every sport that I play. Just do a dry run, see what the optimizer gives without making many changes, because I know I'm going to make a lot of changes. I know that I'm going to put a lot of input in this before I'm done. It's a good starting point.
I think that's the other thing too, and I'll go to you, Title. Just any final thoughts on this, and we can move on to just discuss these captains. But I think it just shows the difference of just using an optimizer to use it and how much work we're actually putting in before we even get to what we're doing. Like that's still part of the dry run look for you. You're just saying, is something skewing my dry run? So when you're actually trying to find out what the field is doing, and that's why I said something that I do that's a little bit different is kind of like what you do there, but I'll show it off here. If you guys noticed, all I did, I'll go back to these in a second. I went to players, I changed it to captain, and I capped Hurts at 30, which I'm usually not even that interested in him on these slates, but a lot different. We'll talk more when we get into it here in a second. But just to note it, now I want to see is like, I don't think people are actually going to run him to 60% on this slate. So let me see what happens when I do that. I may still, and I could have done it right from there, but I just wanted to show you guys a couple options. But it does bring Love up. I could just change him to and rerun it. But now I'm getting more Watson, more Reed, little bit more Jacobs, I'm still not getting enough of the other guys. So that would be part of building my pool out from there and being like, for me, there's no way I'm playing only 1% AJ Brown on this slate. Like, that's nuts to me, especially if Hurts is going to get massive ownership up there. I want the guys that sort of leverage him up and he can be in the flex a bunch more. And then give me my AJ Browns, give me my Devontae Smiths, give me my Goddards up top. So, Title, anything else you want to add on that, man? I think it was just a good way to get a first look for everybody out there.
Yeah, another thing is you talked about it in one of your tutorials, or maybe it was a live show, that column, projected ownership. Oh, go back where you were.
Sorry.
And projection points. Like, even if you just use one team, a benefit of an optimizer, just say 100 points right there is the top one. If your team shows like 76 as your projection points, that's a bad team at the end of the day. You don't want to be in Showdown. You sometimes don't want to be too close to the optimal because then you know it's going to be duped a lot. But you don't want to give up 30 points and play 3 backups because you have no shot to win there. So that's why you try and find the happy medium. If you only play 3 lineups, Nate says this a lot too. He uses an optimizer. He calls it virtual hand building. Look at a decently projected team, decently low owned. Maybe it leaves a little salary. Like, those 3 things right there, salary, projection, ownership, projection points, are massive, massive, massive. You can know nothing about this sport at all. Who watches MMA? He knows some, not as much as a lot of other people, and he still ships it all. Some of the best players don't know their sports because it's math, it's stuff like that. Salary, projection, ownership, projected points mean so much in all formats, but definitely Showdown. So I like that.
One other thing I do too, just so you guys know, is I'll save this one because that is our optimal. It's at 100 points, 0.35. It's 182% ownership. One thing I notice is all these are coming in above 170, and they all come in between 98 and 100. So that just shows you the difference between optimal. But I'll save to know what I'm up against so that when I go back and then make my changes, again, just going through it all and look at it, whether you want to set your build setting, you can go down here and say, where's the percentage at?
Keep going down.
I'm looking for.
I thought it was down there.
49.8, 49.6 or whatever. Like, anyway, total ownership right here. You can go to this. I can go to like 169, right? And then I'm going to be I'm going to have no lineups like that are 170 or above, but I may still get a bunch of 96, 97, 98 pointers. And then I'll start to see what is different within those. And then sometimes you can do it like this. Like, I don't want any silly lineups that are just jamming something to jam it to Title's point. So you can look all different ways. I can see if I go to 49.5, can I still get really good lineups within that? So there's just a ton you can do to play around with it. And then even from like a dry build, you can also change what your percentages are. Guys under a certain percentage owned. You can get a lot more competitive lineups just doing this. But we learned where we're at, Hoop. We've got this covered. I know sort of what I talked about was with some of the captains. It wasn't giving anywhere near enough for me. AJ Brown, Josh Jacobs, Devontae Smith, Jaden Reed, guys like that, Dallas Goedert. So I just given you some of mine, but do you have other thoughts on captain just outside of Jalen Hurts? And then let's talk about him because he's going to be a big talking factor tonight.
Yeah. Just a few comments in the chat, and then I'm going to hop into that from Danny. He said, if you're a Lions fan, and I love the Vikes, they play in the NFC title game, we're going deal. Well, yeah, deal, but like my team has a legitimate chance. I think your team is probably drawing dead in the Vikings. So, if it does happen, though, I'll meet you there. Shout out to our guy, Andy Hoyman. It was nice meeting you last weekend. Good dude. It was a lot of fun at Title's wedding. And there was one more comment. Can't find it, so we'll move on.
While you're finding it, you see that, Tambo? The Lions have been bad for how many years? Now that they're solid, he's got to poke fun at. He's got to pump the chest. Sorry, your team sucks. My team's good.
That's what it is.
It's good now. Yeah, heck yeah. It's been a long time since I've been able to speak about the Lions with confidence.
They cleaned up the whole downtown area. I was there for the Golf Live final. They literally, they're so back that they like redid the downtown. It's nice and cool, set up for everybody, clean, all good. So they're making changes, big changes in the city of Detroit.
Cleaning up the
starts
city.
With the Lions.
Lions are good, so the city's cleaned up.
Time to clean it up. Time to clean it up a little bit. In terms of captains, yeah, the quarterbacks are going to get a lot. We just did that dry run. It's easy to play them. They're both, Hurts obviously runs a ton. Love will run. They both have weapons. They're definitely going to get some. I think Jacobs probably moves up that list too. I think he ends up getting a good chunk of ownership because of the price tag. I think people just view him as a good value play. Outside of that, though, I think things get spread out. I mean, the one that definitely stands out to me is going to be A.J. Brown. He's the most expensive guy on the slate. And, people are going to start building these teams, and they're going to say, man, if I just move A.J. Brown to flex over captain, I'm going to be able to get this sort of upgrade. I think jamming in A.J. Brown in the captain is a move tonight. Devonta Smith, somewhat interesting. There's no way people are going to play him at a high rate in the captain. So I'm going to kind of lean on the Kellen Moore thing, where the Eagles are probably going to pass it a little bit more. You can get both the main targets, I think, at low ownership not low ownership, but lower ownership in the captain spot. And I think they could maybe get squeezed too at the end of the day a little bit. We did that dry run. They didn't show up at all. You started to see those Packers wide receivers start to trickle in there a little bit, but A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, were really nowhere to be found. So I think those are two guys that I'm definitely interested in. The Packers wide receiver guys, Jaden Reed, Dobbs, Watson. I think Watson's one I'm most interested in. He's got the big play upside. Price is cheap on him. Very interested there. I think Dallas Goedert is another guy. But again, I think outside of Hurts, Love, and Jacobs, I think Jacobs, I guess, isn't really shown. What's the projection on Jacobs and the captain? Can you scroll up there a little bit? What do we have him at? Captain ownership, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
He's kind of falls in with what happened last night, where I think a lot of these guys do get to that 10% range.
Yeah.
Eventually it comes down a little bit, and people are going to see, I don't want 50% Jalen Hurts up top. Some people will just jam him all in tonight and hope that he's the same as last year. But I'm saying overall, I think people will start out. So that sounds about right.
I think he comes out so we're showing A.J. Brown and him the same. To me, Jacobs has to get more just because of that price tag. That's just how I'm viewing it. But Devonta Smith, we're showing 6%. And then those Packers guys, like I said, Christian Watson is one I'm most interested in, but I wouldn't be opposed to playing really any of those guys. I mean, they have low price tags. I think they all have some degree of upside, but the two spots I'm going to be looking to, I think, to get some leverage is A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith.
Yeah, I'll go to you in a second here, Title, just so people know it on the stone when you're looking at it, this sort of turquoise blue. I'm looking at those guys too. These turquoise guys are the high upside options. They're risky for sure. There's some risk involved because you feel good about Hurts. You feel good about A.J. Brown, Watson, big play upside, Jacobs, Love. I mean, there's guys that should show up ahead of them. But at the same time, I can see, Jaden Reed can also pull the X-worthy line from last night. He can do stuff like that. So, I mean, Jaden Reed can be involved that way. We've seen the Slim Reaper go out there and get a couple touchdowns and shut down the rest of that offense pretty quick when it comes to fantasy points. So I just have interest in some of those guys. And then Goddard, this is what I said last night. I'm so mad because in the end, I literally came in quote unquote second, lost money on the main tournament because it was just a likely to worthy swap. But I said about what I said about likely. I said, not likely, but it might be. And if it is, you probably win all the money. And what ended up happening? $98,000 to first place with a likely captain. And I was sitting there with a second place version of the flip because I was on Bateman and Justice Hill and other guys instead. But flipping it around today, maybe to a guy like Dallas Goedert, I never hate that. I'm always willing to go back to it. It's not like he's super cheap. He's still $8,700 up top. He's just a little bit less than the Devontae Smiths, the Jacobs, and then way less than the quarterback. So I definitely think that's a little bit interesting. Title, anything to add there? Well, I also throw in the chat. Let's see early who the chat has to win this game. It's a 2-point spread. Who's winning the game? And Title, any other captains you want to talk about or ways to build with them? And then maybe hit on Hurts a little because he's obviously Jalen Hurts and we know what he does in these captain slots.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with Hurts. You can play, he's one of those quarterbacks where you can play him without any other pass catchers because the tush push. He is, I want to say it was -110. Let me get this exactly right. -110 to score on the ground is Hurts. So they get to the 1 yard line, the 2 yard line or whatever, and they do this again. There's no rules I'm going to make when playing Jalen Hurts teams. Now, I do prefer playing a wide receiver or two with him, like Kenny Gainwell, because he's going to get some 2-minute stuff. If they are trailing, maybe he's out there a little bit. But I'm not going to have any rules with Hurts. He can get there in so many ways. I like even though I'm picking the Packers, whatever that means, I like the Philly side way more in captain just because you know where the targets are going to go. Like you're saying, A.J. Brown has to get squeezed. Devontae Smith, he's going to get some ownership, but nothing crazy at all. Saquon Barkley, -115 to score, the most likely in this game. can catch passes out of the backfield, their new toy that they're going to want to play with. Those are some of my 3 favorites right there, and Hurts. By far, my favorite Packer captain is Josh Jacobs. Similar thoughts as yesterday. He doesn't have competition. Assuming Marshawn Lloyd is ruled out, and even if he somehow was in, I think they'd really take it cautious with the hammy. He's going to get as much work as he can. He can catch passes out of the backfield as well. The new toy there in Green Bay. So those are my 4 favorites for sure. Love is kind of the one. And again, if you're playing 150, Dobbs, Wicks, Watson, Reed, Goddard, all those guys, I'd have somewhere in like the 3%, 6% range, but there's no hot takes on that one side for me. There's so many options. Who gets there? And that's kind of, I'm going to throw this back to you, Tambo. Jordan Love captain. I know Jordan, shout out Jordan. You were on the likely captain right in the beginning of the show yesterday. He said, or maybe it was Sean that said, is Love going to be the new Mahomes, where there's just so many guys he can throw to that it hurts his like fantasy output, production, stuff like that? How are you going to play him in captain? If so, do you want at least 2? 7.5 rushing prop isn't great. He has better legs than that, but he does choose to throw. He's the one that I've kind of been going back and forth on. Do I just go way under? Do I leave him in that top 5 group? What do you think?
I'm still going to play him. And I think I'm a little confused on the statement from others on that, because like when somebody spreads it around more like that, it's like, that's actually going to hurt. You know, if Jaden Reed gets a touchdown and Watson gets a touchdown and Dobbs gets a touchdown, that's just 1, 2, 3. They've all got the ball. They've all got 60 yards and a touchdown. That's not likely to be up at the top. But now Love has all those passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And what if he did motor for 40 on the ground or runs one in? So I like him up top, and I like him with 2 with them. I want to try and maximize that. I'm not going to force that, but just to note, like that one, I would definitely put him up top for that reason. When a quarterback spreads it around more is when I kind of like using them in that position. And I think our guy Hebrew's got a great question here. Shout out Rio, says, need to know your guys' thoughts on if Devontae captain fading Brown and vice versa. I will say this. I'm not setting that rule, but I don't think I'm going to get very much of it anyway, because realistically, there is affordable options down low that could make it work, but one does eat the other's lunch. We do have a big total though, but I'll say this. If I got Hurts up top, I can definitely still play them both, because then that's what the whole setup is Hurts running 1 or 2 in and then getting all the passing yards, some rushing yards on the ground. He finds each of them for a touchdown. And again, back to the same point of the Green Bay side, these guys can sort of cannibalize each other and eat each other's lunch up so that it's 3 for 40 and nothing, 4 for 40 and 1 touchdown, so on and so forth, where these other guys could both pick up 100 yards and a touchdown, or one of them has 8 catches for 140. The other guy has 3 for 105 and a touchdown. Like that can all be something that you see happen. So hopefully
I had that queued up to bring up, because I think it is a good point and a lot of validity to it. I mean, it just seems like in the last season, it was one or the other. Like they rarely both got there together. Like one guy would go off, the other guy would just completely bust. And the thing here is, like, if you're playing either of those guys in the captain spot, you're running tight on salary. Like if you play AJ Brown in the captain, like you are sacrificing a lot of salary if you have Devonta Smith in the flex spot, and even vice versa. I mean, Devonta Smith is 9K, 13.5 in the captain. If you put AJ Brown in the flex with him, you are making some big boy sacrifices. So this is a rule I would not be opposed to tonight. But to your point, Tambo, I just don't see myself getting a lot of this naturally, like if I'm building my teams.
Right. And also the factor of you're most likely putting those guys with, and I'll pull his chat offs because block and title now, but you're most likely getting Hurts automatic.
Yeah.
In the flex. You already just buried all that salary.
You're pricing yourself out naturally. Like it's
you're
not
going to get very much of it. But unless you like some of these punts, and maybe you got to look at some of your builds, right? Build some, even lock that. That's the other thing you can do in Shiptimizer. The other thing you can do is you could put like Devontae Smith in the captain, go put Hurts and AJ Brown in the flex, just build 10. And this is the virtual hand build that Nades and I talk about. You go build 10, it'll make them. You look at them, and if you're like, oh my God, those are garbage. Like it's not even about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. If it just doesn't look good to you and you're not interested, move off it. Then and then if you want to set the rule, then I got no problem with it. But if there's a couple versions you like, hand build them in or save those quick and put them into your pool and just roll with that and then say, oh, I got that covered. Now I don't need it anymore. So now I can go set that rule up. Or you can make the rule in groups and put it for 85% of your lineups and let it pop into the ones that it does. But realistically, I would rather get them the way I want them then let the optimizer do it for me in that case. So just a note on that. Looks like a lot of people on the Packers. So Jordan says, of course, the chat loves Packers, so the Eagles will. Am I right? Am I right? Yeah, it's just the chat has had bad luck. Maybe we'll call it bad luck. Maybe it's variance. The chat has not been good with it, but the chat is, I'm guessing, we'll see. We'll see. Over or under. What is it right now, guys? 49.5 still?
Yeah. People, after last night, people are going to love the over. Give
us the total. So Packers and over is incoming, I'm guessing. But let's hear your total. Over, under 49.5. Let's move on. Hoop, do you want to go? Like we talked through some of these captains. Is there anything else you want to add with Jalen Hurts? I guess I'll say one more thing because I've made fun of this guy a ton in the past and just not made fun of him. He's obviously incredible, and in Showdown, he makes perfect sense. I just tried to move off of him a lot more. It's in the slate plan already. I'm going to fill the rest of it out later on. But just to note, I will be playing, which sounds crazy because everybody in the world is like, of course you're playing Jalen Hurts. I actually usually don't play it. So you guys know it. Anyone who watched this in the past, I try and move off it. I'm going to play him today just because there's way too many options to fit it in. Like you can, like I said, you can build. I've seen lineups with Hurts, Devontae, and Brown and been okay with it. So that's why I said to Rio's point originally, I'm not fully against the rule. I just don't see how it's going to happen a lot, but I can hand build out even Hurts lineups that make sense to me and still get it all.
Yeah, just a lot of different ways to go with like the Hurts captain teams. I mean, there's so many different options. I mean, you got the AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Goddard. It's just clean because you know where it's going. I mean, you know he's going to those dudes for the most part. The Saquon Barkley is going to have a guy that he can dump it off to. So I'm with you on the Hurts stuff. The one interesting name, though, again, another guy that I think could potentially get squeezed a little bit. I mean, he has a decent projection. Is Saquon Barkley, 9,400. Like, if the quarterbacks are going to be very popular, like, does Saquon get a little bit overlooked? We're showing like 9% in the captain. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being like 5 or 6, probably 6. I think 6 is a reasonable projection in terms of his ownership in the captain spot. Again, haven't built teams, don't know what I'm going to do. What are you guys' thoughts on Saquon? Captain?
He could be Kelsey of last night, right?
Because so, yeah.
Talked about. I know we mentioned him, but when we've already talked tons about AJ Brown, Devontae, Jalen, we've talked a bunch about Love, Jacobs, and then our kind of combinations of Reed and Watson and whatnot. So clearly Barkley's got to get somewhere in that line, but we said that a little bit about Henry last night, and then everyone boosted him up to 9 or 10% too. So I think they all do fall somewhere in line.
That was such a donkey play, man. Like I get it, but like playing Henry captain last night was so stupid. Such a donkey move, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. This over-under is pretty split, I see here. So we can, I don't know where we'll go on that, but I think more people like the over before we talked about it. But somebody had a good comment here that I want to pull up quickly. Daniels says, really liking the build of a mid-range captain. You do have a lot of options here, right? Watson, Goddard, Wicks, Reed. We already talked about some of the other guys that are even a little less than those quarterbacks, a little less than AJ Brown, Hurts, Love. So I'm with you on that. I got no problem with that. I think some of those make a lot of sense, and they can all get there. Like, we've seen games where Goddard has 2 touchdowns, and that's going to, limit the other guys, but you can still afford them now. So you can get Hurts, Goddard, and another top dog.
Just to touch on that, though, the only thing that scares me about the mid-tier captain builds, just looking at the slate and looking how it's priced, it's almost like salary might not matter. So those guys in the mid-tier might just have to outscore straight up like Hurts and Love or Jacobs. Like, you're not getting much extra by playing a mid-tier captain. That's the only concern I have just looking at this before I really dive into building teams.
I'll take that in a positive way. That means you can leave more money in those builds, and then you see like the likely, the worthies.
But
there is
enough guys. We talked about, if people play those cheapish or mid-tier, they're filling out their salary more times than not. They're not playing those guys to leave money on the table. They're playing those guys to get an additional stud in there. So yeah, if you're willing to leave it, I think that definitely makes more sense.
Yeah, if you're playing in the 130,000 mil, like that's the stuff in those lineups. I do try and leave it because you saw yesterday, like Tambo's 1v1. He even went more down in money, the likely, and it's $900,000.
Yeah.
Yes, it's tough, right? You got to know what you're getting into. But my man Jordan out here talking about T. Higgins on Sunday. That definitely changes the slate. But we're talking about Friday night football, talking about $1 million up top. If you guys are just joining us or you've been here for a minute, do us a favor, smash the like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I'll show it off quickly here. We did hit 7,500 overnight. This drive for 10K. We really want the nation to get behind this. Help us share it out there. Join Get in. It's free to subscribe. All the videos that we've got coming out. Obviously, the Sunday main show going to be back here. We just had the cash show. We're going to have the college football show. Still doing baseball shows. Just tons of different stuff going on this channel. So first of all, subscribe. Then if you go down and just scroll to that launch show, 1.7K down here, stream today, go in there and put team hashtag SHIPIT. Any nice comments, something like that you want. We still have $300 Millie Maker tickets that we're giving away. So just want to throw that out there as well. Just brought it back here too, Hoop, real quick. Goddard?
That's going to be a majority of builds on the slate. I mean, majority of people are going to play both quarterbacks. I mean, they're both underpriced. Everyone sees that. If you just go in and build teams without changing, like we just did, you got what do we get? Like 100% Hurts and like 70% Jordan Love or something crazy like that?
Yeah, that's what it was giving us. So again, what people actually take and what they come out at. But yeah, it'll be very popular for that. This was the balance build. If you go Goddard, pair him up with Hurts, I can even get to like Watts and AJ Brown and still have over 7,000 left. So maybe field size matters, maybe titles point of like, you know what I mean? If you want to leave a bunch more money, but that point Hoop made actually about, the original point and being able to leave money tonight may not actually matter. That's definitely another reason, back to my last comment on it about Jalen Hurts at captain tonight. Another reason I'm interested in him, because even with him being as popular as he is, you can get different with them in so many ways tonight, and leaving salary is a standard on this stuff. But I'm saying like you can have good lineups with good plays, with good backups or good options in there that you can do it with. So yeah, you can really do a lot of different things tonight. And it makes this, to me, a more fun showdown slate even than last night. Like I like these ones better when there's so many more outs. And even last night we got a 98K first place prize. So I mean, that's pretty solid for what it was. 196,000 people. The buy-in shoots up a little bit more tonight, but I will note that before we go back to here and get into the last thing with the positions, we had a ton of people last night. It was actually a comment in Discord yesterday saying, you got to have 150 lineups. That's the only way, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not against them. I know it's what people think. And I showed them the math. I was like, does it feel better? Yeah, technically, yes. But in a 196,000 person tournament like that, it's not like the math edge is not as massive out there when it comes to that. But in reality, we had two people turn $5 into $2,700. We had a $62 into $3K. We had a $250 into $3K. We had 1,000 into 10,000. Like we still had another one was 28X on the slate, $23 into $5K. Like there was a lot of people last night that were hitting it, and that was with Worthy at captain in most cases. Not many people actually went to likely. It was just sort of the backup lineup that got them to the top in some of these smaller field tournaments. That's the difference between the main and the smaller field. So just another note there. We want to go to running back title and just hit up on that real quick. We already talked a little bit about Barkley. You mentioned Jacobs earlier, but anything do you have to add at the running back position?
Yeah, just keep an eye. Inactives matter today, 100%. So Marshawn Lloyd, a big question mark. I think he misses. If he does miss, that's when Emmanuel Wilson becomes even a better play. But if Lloyd is active and they say he's going to get some work, I mean, he's a rookie that was pretty highly touted. Again, I'd be surprised. How I'm looking at running back is I think they're going to run Saquon hard for the Eagles. I think they're going to run Jacobs hard. I don't have much interest in the secondary ones. It's going to be, assuming Lloyd's out, Emmanuel Wilson. And then on the other side, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell. And they also got another rookie named Will Shipley. I don't really want to mess with these guys too much down there. Like the kickers are way underpriced today, especially the Packers kicker. The defenses are still down there. There's Tucker Kraft, assuming he plays, Jahan Dotson. I think I'd rather take a shot on most of those guys. But Emmanuel Wilson, I definitely like more than Gainwell and Shipley. Assuming Lloyd's out, I'm going to be playing a decent amount, I think, relative to the field of Wilson, just because at the end of the day, as we saw Pacheco, no one plays 100% of snaps anymore. Hoop was talking about it yesterday. But in big-time spots, I really am going to lean on Jacobs being the guy, Barkley being the guy. I don't want too many secondary pieces, but I do think Wilson is good if Lloyd's out.
Yeah, I was looking. The chat brought it up, and Hoop, we had this in PGA this season. Neil Shipley leads both. He was the top amateur at the Masters and the U.S. Open. The guy just came out and crushed a couple other tournaments. He did really well. We got Will Shipley for the Eagles. I know, and not trying to really focus and get there, but it is kind of funny. Shipley Nation, been a bit of a thing, like Marvelous D says, and shout out to Drea back here with us, always supporting. We appreciate you. Daniels brings it up too. That's another point I always make. Like, if you used to be allowed to play unlimited lineups. Sahil Sud back in the day, 500 plus lineups into a tournament all in. If you got the wrong stuff, it doesn't matter if you have 500, 5,000. If you're not on it, if you don't got it, you don't got it. So it's like that's kind of the setup as well. And why I always say if you play lighter, play tighter, just meaning like tighten up your pool, tighten up maybe your captain pool, whatever that is, because you don't want to have 20 max entry where the 20 lineups you pick are 20 different captains. I'm just exaggerating, or 10 captains that you play 2 of each. Well, you're probably going to hit the right captain, but 18 lineups are going immediately in the trash. Why not try and be when you're right, have a bunch of ways to pepper it, like he says here, unless you smack the core. 20 max is where I would really hammer in on a tight core and try and keep it that way. So, Hoop, anything you want to add on the running backs? I'm actually really aligned with title. It's like Jacobs, Barkley, Wilson, and then if other stuff falls in, it falls in. But that's kind of where I'm focused at right now.
Got me thinking of my boy Sahil, one of the nicest guys ever in this industry, man. Just such a nice dude. Sad to see him no longer in the industry, but hell of a guy. I remember hanging out with him in where was it, in Boston. He had just bought Rajon Rondo's penthouse suite at like the best, nicest apartment complex in downtown Boston. It was a good time, good dude. I'm with you guys on the running back stuff. Same mindset. Like, it just seems like, 2 running backs in a new spot, like first game, they're going to ride these guys. They're going to ride Saquon. They're going to ride Josh Jacobs. I just can't imagine these backup guys getting much work, like no matter who it is. I love the name Shipley, but I don't think he's going to be shipping us any cheese tonight. So I probably will just X him out. And then like Emmanuel Wilson, like, man, I just can't imagine these guys being a factor. And the main thing is like we have so many guys in that 4K range, 5K range, where like they're going to have to outscore those dudes. And I just don't see it happening. We have all the Packers wide receivers. We have the kickers. Like I just Goddard at 5,800. I just can't imagine that it's the backup running backs that get the job done tonight. So mostly going to be focused on the main guys, Barkley and Jacobs.
Yeah, let's go to wide receiver. I'll stay with you. Maybe you can sort of hit on that a little bit of, your exposure to running backs in the flex versus filling it up with these wide receivers, because we do have a lot of options. And obviously the optimizer, as we saw earlier, wanting to give a lot of these wide receivers between Reed, Watson, Dobbs, all the guys on the Philly side, everything there. So how are you handling wide receiver versus something like running back? And then who are some of the wide receivers that are standing out for you?
Yeah, it's like where the slate's won or lost, this position, like what you do with these guys, captain, flex, whatever it may be. Like this is going to be the deciding factor tonight, who wins the slates and who wins the slate and loses the slate. So many viable options here. And you almost have a reverse. Like on the Philadelphia side, both these guys looked somewhat overpriced. AJ Brown, 11K, Devonta Smith, 9K. Going to lead to probably getting squeezed a little bit in captain and in flex. Then you look at the Packers side of things, they all look cheap, but there's so many of them. So they're going to get spread out a little bit because there's just so many options. You have Reed, Dobbs, Watson, Wicks. Coming back on the Philadelphia side, you have Dotson, who's in play at 3,200. It's a very interesting situation. What you do at this position, I think, wins or loses the slate, whether we're talking captain or flex, how you pair these wide receivers up with Love in the Love captain, in these Love captain teams, what you do. There's just so many factors with each one of these guys at the position. What you do here, like I said, I think determines, if you win or lose the slate. It's a big, big decision.
The Burrow stacks, man, people are going nuts about them still, and we're talking about Showdown, but it's funny just how much hype there is already for that game on Sunday with all the news that's coming out early. You can tell it's week 1. Title, I'll get your thoughts. You can break these guys down. You last year you did a good job of it, sort of fighting through, picking and choosing who these guys were. They had a lot of injuries, stuff like that. The chat makes a good point. Another thing about we just talked to Emmanuel Wilson, but if Lloyd is out, maybe it is a guy like Reed who gets some of these snaps to hop in there. We've seen these end arounds. We've seen him very shifty, very fast, lots of different ways. And he's pretty good catching the ball through the air, things like that as well. So I think he just becomes a bit more interesting to me. I kind of like Jaden Reed, even up at the captain. We mentioned earlier, I did hit on that, but I'll hit it again. So give us your breakdown on the Packers side and then take us over to the Eagles as well. A few questions on Jahan Dotson coming over, obviously, from the Commanders this season. Give us your thoughts at wide receiver.
Yeah, I agree with Hoop. I think it's going to be won or loss. The Packers side, I'm not going to be playing any Malik Heath, but I will be keeping Bo Melton in my pool at 1,200. Another guy the Packers like a lot, pretty talented, and they rotate a ton. So the reason I'm with you, Jaden Reed's my favorite, is because he's the one that primarily works out of the slot. He won't be in 2 receiver sets more times than not. It'll usually be Dubs and then one of Watson, Wicks. But almost any time there's 3 receivers out there, Reed will be in the slot. Dubs is the clear wide receiver 1 in terms of will get the most playing time. Watson, finally healthy this year. He's going to be the main guy in 3 receiver sets. But, I think Wicks is so talented. The problem is the snap share is going to be so much less. So you're embracing more volatility with Wicks. If I had to rank them, I'm going Reed 1. Man, Watson and Dubs are so tough. I think I'm going to go Watson 2 because I like the upside. I like Watson more in the flex if I had to pick. But again, this is why I play 20-plus teams and stuff, so I can mix and match these guys. What I do know is I'm going to be playing some Bo Melton when I know not too many are, because there's no, I'm not playing anybody below Bo Melton. Calcaterra, there's Heath, there's nobody down there. I like him more than Chipley, who's $800 more. Then you get Wilson, who's $1,200 more. So it could be one of those days where Bo Melton catches 1 pass for 20 yards, 3 DK points. If A.J. Brown goes off, Saquon, Jacobs, Hurts, all the top ones, we've seen stuff where 1 catch all the way down does get there. So, yeah, I'm going to be playing a good amount of them. Jaden Reed's my favorite out of the slot, but they're going to be mixing and matching a lot, which is why this slate is so hard. And I do think Packers receivers, at least one of them will probably be on the winner. Which one's the question? A lot easier on the Eagles side. I'm not getting Paris Campbell more than likely. I don't even know if he's going to be active. Dotson came over from Washington, so he's wide receiver 3. It was Johnny Wilson prior to that. I don't even think if you kept Wilson, I don't know. That's definitely a 150 max stuff.
Johnny Wilson's got to get in there in the 150 for sure.
Yeah, in the 150. Yeah.
Everyone has Emmanuel Wilson. Like, oh, Wilson scored. Or no, that's Johnny.
It was Zacchaeus. Was it Zacchaeus last year as the wide receiver 3? He had his 35-yard touchdown. The problem is they're just so Hurts doesn't use wide receiver 3s at all. It's all A.J. Brown, all Smith, Saquon out of the backfield, Goddard and his legs. But again, look at those prices. A couple catches here and there is fine.
Different for sure. We're going to see a here's Johnny Jeff in the Discord later tonight because it could be him. But I'm with you, and I think the chat brought up a good point. They were already on your Bo Melton. I don't think everybody is. This is a member over at SHIPIT Nation. The members are always digging in, and Jordan comes back with this one. Little nugget for the Love captain builds. Love was optimal captain 4 times last year, and 3 of the 4 times he had 2 pass catchers come with him. Makes sense. It's what we talked about earlier, but that's sort of the nuggets that we're trying to dig up, the tidbits that we like. Johnny Wilson is 6'7". We've done this stuff before. This is we got to get a combine check and go back and find all the details on Johnny Wilson. But Hoop, I'll let you talk.
Who the hell is Johnny Wilson?
He's the I think he was like the wide receiver
4.
Wide receiver 4, yeah, I guess.
He was wide receiver 3 before they brought in Dotson.
Oh, I already X'd his ass out. No wonder I know. I was one of the first guys I eliminated from my player pool.
6'7", 4'5", Yeah,
he's definitely catching a couple now. Is he the new? Is he the new? Who's the tight end last year that I called the 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, I was trying to think. Who was that?
He's out of the league now.
I forget what it was, but
someone cut his ass. One of the teams just cut his ass. You got someone in the chat. The Chargers tight end. What's his name?
Parham.
Yeah, my boy Parham, the double tight end call. That was epic.
No, someone said it right away. That
was epic on the main slate.
They cut his ass, right? I don't think he's in the league anymore.
Parham, they're going to get him on the Lions. They're going to bring him over to the spot.
I swear, if they sign his ass, I'm getting a jersey immediately. Oh, you got me excited now. A Lions Parham jersey?
Johnny Wilson tidbit. The biggest wide receiver drafted in the past 10 years.
Awesome.
Johnny Wilson.
He fell all the way to the 6th round. I don't know if that tells you that.
He's projected for 0.5 fantasy points tonight. Fire away.
Parham. Will Sun he's going to sun these cats. He'll be out there, get 2 touchdowns on them, just reaching over top of them and then giving them the 2 small because he's up over above them. So it could be a possibility here. We see Johnny Wilson tonight. Any other wide receiver takes from you, Hoop, on the other guys?
No, Johnny Wilson. No, man, that's funny. No, I mean, it's just like I said, it's a very important position. What you do with these guys, captain, flex. It's I do like that nugget though from Jordan though about Jordan Love having 2 pass catchers with him while in captain. That's something to definitely take note of.
Jordan loves Jordan. That makes sense. So we'll get in there. We'll find some more stuff before the night hits. We'll be in the Discord after this. We'll be getting all the content up on the site. Some of it up already and started. But tight end, you want to talk about this one? Quick title. I know you think Kraft probably plays, right? I sort of see it that way as well. The chat was asking earlier, what if he's out? But I think it's going to be fine. I think he's in. There's Musgrave there, and then on the other side we got Goddard. And then you and I are aligned today. I don't know how our lineups will actually come out when it's all said and done, but our thought process, position by position, has actually been pretty similar. I've really only got interest in those 3 and not super interested in Calcaterra or anything like that, which I think is pretty standard across the board.
Yeah, the 3 tight ends, assuming Kraft plays. And if he doesn't, someone mentioned it too, then Sims will be tight end 2, and you can definitely play him for mid-price, Ben Sims, if somehow Kraft is out. But yeah, it's Musgrave, it's Kraft, it's Goddard. Man, like, I don't want any recency bias coming in from yesterday, but like talking 35-year-old Kelsey, he looked like he lost a step. Mark Andrews definitely lost 8 steps. Goddard's getting to that point too where he feels like he's lost a step or 2. But again, I don't try and look at more than math. The ownership checks out. When you play Hurts, it makes sense. But I like these Packers tight ends. Like Musgrave has to get squeezed to an extent because he's in between both kickers. Then you go up a little bit, the kickers, you have Wicks, you have Watson. I just think people will try and find those spots. And defenses are 600 cheaper, 1,000 cheaper. He's a guy that just can't get too much ownership. I like Kraft too, though. Like Kraft for the savings, I almost might even like more. They're going to mix in both guys. They're going to run some 2 tight end sets. And both guys are pretty solid after the catch. Like they're not just unathletic dudes that just don't move. Like these guys can catch the ball and turn up field and do something. So yeah, all 3 of those tight ends.
We're going to mix them in. I mean, that's going to be the thing tonight. It's just more, we always talk from more of like a roster construction, how we're playing them, all of that stuff. But in these guys, they're just sort of getting mixed in. It's like just the setup is there's just so many other dudes. You talk about liking Emmanuel Wilson, talk about, especially if Lloyd's out, we like Bo Melton as a guy that you could fit in as a punt. So if we get some Johnny Wilson in there, like we just talked about, being serious, is that what if Dotson's not fully up and running and ready? Is it likely? Probably not. But if we can get this guy involved, I don't want to keep using that word and name because of last night, there's some PTSD out there. But in general, I'm just saying there is opportunities to use some of these other guys. So these tight ends just are going to be, if they pop in, it's more of like a large field set where you're just trying to get unique and get different. Dalai Lama asked a good question. Said when running a 20 max, I talked about, committing stronger to a core. What I was saying is essentially, I'm not necessarily going all in. You could. I talk about play lighter, play tighter. But what I would do is like 7, 7, and 6. Maybe I run 3 captains and I get enough of them. Or I run like a 10-10 and get 2 captains. I'm just saying I'm not spreading it out to 10 captains 2 times. Like that's not what I'm doing in a 20 max. So I'm not going completely just one-offing every spot for, this kicker in this lineup, that kicker in the other, whatever. But it is sort of the way I would set it up. We talk more about that in the education course. And real quick too, if you're not a member, don't plan on being one, whatever. These shows are all free. We appreciate everybody for watching. Do us a favor, like and subscribe. That's the free stuff. But more free stuff, you can just go to the site and download our 45-minute Showdown course. If you guys want to know, our success in Showdown, the members, the stuff we're talking about, the strategies, just put your email and sign up. It'll send you a link for the private YouTube link. You guys can go take that course and check it out. Speaking of kickers and Ds and all that, Hoop, I'll go to you on that stuff before we get out of here to the FanDuel stuff and end this thing. But last night, kickers 25 and 21, 26 and 21%. Defenses were 14 and 11. So these kickers, and people still like them. And here you got Jake Elliott. I mean, for sure, a guy that people always like. And then you've got Eagles, Packers, D, and then, of course, go over to the Packers kicker as well. So talk to us about the kickers and D. Anything you got there?
Yeah, one thing to add to the tight end conversation, if Tucker Kraft is out, I think definitely massive boost to Musgrave. I think he becomes one of the better value plays on the slate. He's right there with all those Packers wide receivers. I mean, they have Sims, but I just can't imagine that he's going to have a big role. So if Kraft is for some reason ruled out, I mean, Musgrave gets a massive boost. Same thing. This is going to be the year that people get punished for playing these defenses. I feel last year was the year of the defense, and everyone was super excited. And we saw some slates where these defenses were like 40-50% owned. Ownership was kept in check last night, but I do the same thing with the defenses. Like it's like I just put the moderate projection in there. If I get them, I get them. Like I'm not actively trying to get them into my lineups. So have the same approach tonight. And then kickers. I mean, I never need to talk about kickers. I'm always on the kickers. Like I think they're too cheap for Showdown.
How about that? Best kicker in the world plays for the Packers right now. Because by the way, Justin Tucker, he's no more Hall of Famer, nothing. He missed a huge opportunity last night, so he's done. And I forgot about this too. I barely paid attention.
He is.
Maybe Title would have been on top of it in the best ball streets, but I forgot.
No one's playing him.
Yeah, you're not picking his ass up. I'm just saying in general, paying attention to it because I think that's something I just totally missed.
And they gave him a price. I figured he'd be 2,500. He's 3,200 on the main slate. How is he not the min?
They know that he can score.
Not the min.
The hoopster calls it, right? That's what we're still waiting on. Main slate show on Sunday here is going to be incredible because there's going to be some loser that you're on that all of a sudden has their career game just because you like them, and everything always goes Hoops' way. So
got to tune in to find out. There's only one way to find out. Got to tune in.
Wardo had a comment here earlier, and this reminded me just of what Hoop was talking about when he mentioned Musgrave, and it's just part of it. We talk about all this stuff. If there's good stuff to talk about, we'll stick around and keep the show going. But I mean, this is good stuff. This is hindsight and results oriented for sure. To go back and say, oh yeah, Andrews, of course he was going to have to block because that O-line is shit and all of that. But realistically, that is something that I think a lot of us, myself included, overlooked last night. He was out there a ton, but he was blocking a ton. And because there's a new O-line, just didn't think of that fully. That could have led us a little bit more to Likely. We were already on him some and all that. I'm just saying like that could have made the thought make a little bit more sense. More
Likely
than just
was like in the slot and stuff. He was their like number one wide receiver. Like it was Zay Flowers and him. Like he was not playing like the tight end position. If I'm from what I saw, I mean he was a wide receiver.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So again, it sounds like after the fact, we're just bringing that up, but most cases, again, I'm guilty of it as well. We're making likely and unlikely jokes instead of thinking about the actual possibilities of some of the situational stuff. And I thought you brought up a good one there, Hoop, is that if Tucker Kraft's out, what happens is people look to a guy like Sims right away. Oh, he frees up the whole slate. We break it down. All of a sudden he gets over-owned. Yet Musgrave not only technically has the position to himself because he's the only guy there with no Kraft. And again, I'm expecting Kraft to be in. These are good concepts around the Showdown game as a whole, things that we focus on, not just the plays for tonight. I would say this is it's a twofold situation, Hoop, because all of a sudden Sims probably gets over-owned. You get Musgrave, who kind of opens it up to himself, but then it's the key that you mentioned. Everyone that's fitting in, the Reeds, the Watsons, the Dubs, the Wicks plays, he's right there in the same offense, and he actually does pick you up a little bit of money, whether you need it or don't. He could be the guy like Title and I always talk about, where you just say, you know what, I have Dobbs in this one, or I have Wicks. I'm just dropping him to Musgrave and leaving the money. It's just, and then Musgrave gets that touchdown in the end zone instead of Wicks or something, and all of a sudden that makes it worth it, and that's what ships you all the money at the end of the night. So I just think little things like that are important to take into consideration as little tidbits that you're finding out as the season goes along. That's what makes the difference. It only takes one big win, one big night. Could have been 98,000 off the hop last night, and tonight could very well be the same with how diverse the teams are here tonight with many options on this slate. Title, anything to add on kicker defense or anything else you want to talk about before we go to the FanDuel segment?
No, I think projected ownership looks pretty standard where I'm not going to have strong. I'm kind of like Hoop in the sense of I always like kickers, but defenses I think are in a lot of games like this, higher total games are always so low owned. It's just so easy for me to plug them in and chalk your lineups to get different. So I'll be doing the same, and you just hope for a punt return, one big pick six, stuff like that they end up there. So yeah, similar stuff as Hoop. I just like the defenses a little more.
Yeah, and I think maybe just rules-wise stuff, because you talk about it often, Title. People talk to me all the time about this. Do you do anything with the defenses and the kickers to split them up on a slate with a total like 49.5, or do you do it how you see the game script? Is there anything you do to split those guys up when it comes down to it?
I don't, but I pretty much will never have like 3 of the 4 in the lineup. So
like at most 2 of that group if you wanted.
Yeah, if I would make a group, it'd be that.
So you could do that in Shiptimizer. You could just put all 4 of those together. And then in the flex, because that's, if you're probably not playing them at captain, you may be getting some of the kickers at captain, but just in general, your flex play, you could set it up to 100% of your lineups to have 0 to 2 so that you'd get lineups without them. But even when you are getting them, it's at most 2. And then obviously you could spread them apart if you wanted to. But, sometimes people have the defense from one side, the kicker from the other. There's a lot more you can do. And like Hoop talked about last night, sometimes you can rule yourself out in Showdown where you just put too many rules. So little things like that I always like to ask just in case. Hoop, anything else? If not, talk to us a little bit about FanDuel tonight because, man, Jalen Hurts, it just always seems like, I don't know, you can see it there, their price. He is priced at $17,000 over on FanDuel. We've got it up over here. So A.J. Brown, $3,000 less. Isn't that funny, too? Like on DraftKings, A.J. Brown is for look at the misprice on Hurts tonight. Yeah. And then over on FanDuel, it's completely covered. $3,000 between the two of them.
Yeah, so he's still going to be popular. Quarterbacks are always popular over on FanDuel. He's $17K. Love is $15,500. Other prices that stand out, I would say the running backs are priced appropriately. Josh Jacobs, $12,500. Saquon Barkley, $13,500. We talked about A.J. Brown at $14,000. Devonta Smith, $12,000. I think those are all just legitimate price tags and kind of where they should be. Both kickers are $8K, very cheap. We've seen kickers as high as $9,500 on FanDuel, some maybe even like $10K. So $8K for both kickers. I would say that's definitely on the cheap side. Wicks is basically a full punt. He's $6,500. His price is definitely higher on DraftKings relatively. So Wicks at $65 kind of stands out as a cheap play. Kraft, if he plays, $6K. I like the cheap tight end plays probably a little bit more on FanDuel because if they catch a touchdown, it's just worth so much more on FanDuel versus DraftKings. But yeah, the couple things that definitely stand out would be the kickers all the way down at $8,000, and then the flip from DraftKings, Hurts being the most expensive and A.J. Brown down to $14K.
Yeah, look at the Musgrave versus Goddard price too. Only $500 in the difference. That's the pricing there is just way different than over on DraftKings, and that's another interesting point for tonight. If you are playing over there, I think that's something to keep in mind. Title, anything you had to add just from a FanDuel perspective?
Yeah, the two leverage plays are guys that have to be squeezed, like you mentioned. Musgrave at $9K. In between, Dobbs is $9K. Goddard's $9,500. So that's a way to get different. Christian Watson's the highest price Packers wide receiver at $11K, which is way different than DraftKings. Yeah. Breeda's $10K. Devonta Smith is $12K. So Devonta's only $1K more. And Watson is a guy we know he has big time upside, big play guy. If he goes 4 for 102 or something, he has that kind of upside that just can't be played because of his price. So other than that, yeah, kickers are way too cheap.
Yeah, I got nothing to add. So I think we're good on that. Anything else, Hoop, that you wanted to cover before we get out of here? I mean, we've been trying to keep these shows to an hour, but if there's good questions, we'll always stick around just to make sure we answer them. Again, a lot of what we do over at SHIPIT Nation is focused on process. Talked about being able to get the free course that you can download. If you want to get in on the action, the early bird pricing, should note that is still on. We moved it to Sunday. It does say September 5th, but you can click it. You can get in. If you go to Join the Nation, that's just the main special with Shiptimizer, which we went through earlier and covered, but you can go to all access, less than $100. You can get all the sports and all the sports that we cover in Shiptimizer, plus all the future sports that we add and all the features that come with them. But you can also just click over to single sport, go to football. You'll see everything we cover there. You can check out the drop-down menu of all the stuff that we'll have. You get weekly, monthly, or annual. And then if you just want to add it with our optimizer, Shiptimizer, it goes up a little bit for the weekly, monthly, annual. All these are early bird prices. So if you want to get in, that will lock in for you so that you're all set for the season. Go ahead, Hoop.
Yeah, just, we get our content up nice and early. I'm going to hop over as soon as we're done with this show and finalize all my teams, finalize the content. A lot of stuff's already up. That's a commitment we kind of make to our community. We'll get our stuff up nice and early so you have time to digest it, get in the Discord, ask any questions that you may have. We'll get everything up nice and early over at shipnation.com. We have a baseball show coming up as well, 3:30. So if you're still grinding MLB, they're starting up in 15 minutes, Nades and Ham. So head on over there, listen to that one. But excited for this slate, very excited for the main slate. So the plan is 9:45 Eastern. The three of us will be breaking down the main slate show. It was a hell of a show last year. We had a lot of fun. I think the people that tuned in found it to be very valuable and helpful. So make sure to join us Sunday morning right here, 9:45 Eastern.
Yeah, Title, any final thoughts from you, my friend, before we get out of here? We'll be back for Sunday, of course. Like you said, the cash show. People can go back and check it out. We're going to have other shows for college football, baseball, all that across the weekend. The Sunday Night Football Showdown show with Ham and Nades that they put out is recorded. But Title, any final thoughts from you before we get out of here?
I mean, this is what every DFS player, sports fan loves. One of the best weekends. We had football yesterday, a million tonight, MMA tomorrow, college football tomorrow, Sunday, and then, hey, we also got Monday Showdown too. So plenty of cheese to be made this weekend. Good luck to you, Tambo, and MMA this weekend. Good luck to Hoop as well. Good luck to us and everybody else watching at football. Let's hopefully run it back yesterday. It was awesome to see those screenshots, but enjoy it. We always summer, nothing going on. We always dream for these times, so enjoy it for sure.
Luckily, we're just getting started, so we're excited, right? Like you said, it's going to be another good one. I was going to play a different outro, but I got to hear that one from last night again. And stick around. It's a good beat, and you'll see all the success the community had from last night. Thank you guys for watching. Hit the like, subscribe to the channel. That's going to do it for this one. For Hoop, for Title, for myself, ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it!